it was a great, beautiful time. And what I want to say is, and I said this in shul here yesterday, because everyone is talking about, of course, what happened, Rahman al-Islam, that, K'nei Nahara, there's so many people. When I was there 2 years ago myself, I was, by the Hadlaka, and I was surprised, frankly, no one got hurt. I saw the barricades, from the pressure of people just being pushed from all sides. And when I wanted to exit, it was so narrow, and I said, it's nisim. I think what they have to do is they have to take Lag B'Omer and make it into a week's festival. 3 days before, 3 days after, and Lag B'Omer. And they throw a geidel, and whoever wins the geidel goes a Lag B'Omer. Because it says in Chazal, the 3 days before is relevant to the Yom Hilula, and the 3 days after. There's just too many people. It's just too many people. That's it. You disagree? Tell me. You guys disagree?
No, I don't disagree. Is it? I was surprised to. I heard a shir that was talking about how it's the sort of a yeshivish approach to say it's really. Rabbi Shimon is in the Gemara. Is it don't be mevatel Torah to do that? And then I was surprised to see that that's sort of the practice in Ger. I saw from the Talmud Rebbe that he was quoting from the Pnei Menachem that he discouraged us from Hasidim from going. So what's the approach to that in the Chabad communities here?
Well, the Chabad all the years, if they were able to, they went to Miron to be on the Tzion. And, let's say in the 1950s when my father was in yeshiva, they would hire a bus and it was a big deal. And, and they tried getting there. So, Chassidim B'chlal, I'm not saying there's an exception. You see, the Pnei Menachem is dealing with it the way it is today, or even 20 years ago when there were hundreds of thousands of people,
Right.
But my knowledge is that Chassidim, if they were able to, they went. But again, if you can't get there, it's even the Rebbe seeing here. It's busy the whole time. And what do they have? They have a system. You get a minute or two inside, and you go in, you circle, you read your letter, you tear it up, and you go out. And they have shomrim, and they're encouraging people, and people listen. I mean, there's just too many people, and you want more time. Come a day before, come a day after. As far as Bittul Torah, so the answer to your question is no. Hasidim don't look at going to Tzion as Bittul Torah. But there's a difference, Hillel. There's a difference staying up 24/7 or half a night or the next night and not sleeping and being mevatel, your whole day and whole night. That's another issue. It's another issue. And again,
apparently it was also an issue of of the kind of the sneas and the shmiras einayim issues. The Talmud Rebbe also spoke about that. These were kind of new distinctions I hadn't heard before. So until the aftermath of all this.
Okay. Listen, when I was there, I didn't see hardly any women. I only saw men mostly. So I guess I was there at night. But of course, if there's a sneas issue, but that's not a reason not to go. It's a reason to find a time when it's more tzandua. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
But the point is that it's again, why this happened we don't know, and we shouldn't. It's Eibishter. It's a situation of Hayidom Aaron. The Torah says, and Aaron kept silent. There's a time when there's nothing to say. But we have to look for the future and what can we do?
Right.
And the hulu. So I think practically just do a system of a week festival and that's it.
Yeah.
And listen, at the end of the day, It's all emunah, right? It's emunah that you believe that when you go to a tzaddik's kever on his yard site, he's listening, Hashem's listening, and there's more of a chance your tefillas should be accepted. If you don't have that emunah, you're wasting your time going and you're out of your mind. So it's emunah. So if it's about emunah, have the same emunah that the tzaddik and God's going to answer your prayers 3 days before, 3 days after.
Right. Well, one other question on this matter. Are you familiar with the minhag to go to Meron on Yud Aleph Tammuz, the yurt side of the Zidishover?
No. Why he
No?
left? He left.
Okay.
He left the instruction to do so.
It's a minhag that some people have. I read about it in the Luach, and but I've never met anybody who's familiar with it, except a reference, I think, from the Munkacher, who said, "Gadlu laHashem iti," and iti was
Yud Aleph.
Yud
Aleph Tammuz. E.T. Very nice. Very nice.
I don't know.
I'm not familiar. Anyway, Yonason, you wanted to say something, or should we start the shir?
Yeah, I wanted to say that when, like you said, the word dom, when Aaron's two sons died, Hashem told him, "Dom, be quiet."
Yeah.
The gematria of dom is 44, plus the Klolei is 45.
And
those were the amount of people that were nifter.
I hear you. I personally don't look to justify people that were nifter, but I hear what you're saying. Yes, Avi.
Not going into what aveiros did we do that we deserved it, and what tikkun do we have to do so it doesn't happen again. On a practical matter, countries and religions have sites that are popular, that citizens and tourists come to visit. Mecca, Medina, whatever it is. So this is something we're not. We're in the 21st century of a Medina that has a responsibility to its citizens. There's a minister of religion, then there's a minister of police and internal security. There are different authorities, knowing that this is a popular, well-visited site, have to take achrayut and say, knowing that we're going to have X number of people, we need to have infrastructure that will allow them to get in, allow them to be there, allow them to get out. I've been to the Kotel when there have been 150, 200,000 people. I've been to rallies for or against the peace process where there have been 200,000 people there. It's the responsibility of traffic control, traffic safety, and someone here, it's not my fault, it's your fault. It's not your fault, it's Moshe's fault. It's not Moshe's fault, it's Nessa. There needs to be some kind of overall umbrella or a combination of people to examine what do we face, how do we do it in a safe manner, and you can't, if there's an Indian l'shtateach b'kivrei tzadikim, which we get from Parshat Shlach with
Kala
Yifuna,
yeah.
So there's an Indian, and while one can visit any day they want, one can't get away from saying that people go to Mecca and Medina during a certain time, and people go to the Church of the Holy Sepulchre at a certain time, and Jews go to their own on the yurt site. So now it's the responsibility of the government to provide that security that's necessary. And if they don't, a country that doesn't provide the security of their people abrogates the first responsibility of government, which is the safety of the people.
Okay. I hear you. It's out of my control, out of our control. Let us go on. David should help. Everyone should do tshuva. and protect B'nai Yisrael. We're on page 55 in the Maimer, in the essay Kuntres HaChinuch. The Kitzer, before we continue with Ois Yud. Someone has, do me a favor, mute yourself. I hear background noise, please. Kitzer, HaChinuch v'Hadracha Haruya l'Yosh v'Yoyel, the proper Chinuch and education, Yefsher l'Balasokim, that type of Chinuch that you give for someone who is sitting in the tents of Torah cannot be given the same way to people who are in business. And we discussed this at length in the last few classes, so we're just going to go right into the next matzav. Remember, we're speaking about the matzav, the situation that of the student that the educator must take into consideration. And what is that? In the Yud, Beis, second matzav. Ha'yischalkus al pi matzav ha'kalkoli. The classification based on circumstances. Aniyim or yashirim. Poor or wealthy or rich. Let's go. Hachaluka halazoi stashidas vaniyas. This division that we find between people, if they are on the wealth from wealth or from poverty, or they are wealthy or poor. He chaluka tivis. The Rebbe says this is natural. We know the rule, habit engraves in each one a natural nature. And look at the last words, which is always important. Kemaimet, as the saying is, hergel nasa teva. Habit becomes nature. You get used to wealth and money, that becomes who you are. And it's not really who you are, but it becomes who you are. Hergel nasa teva. And so too in the opposite way. Yes.
There's the Sefer Pachad Yitzchak that's noted, number 37 in that line. Is that the Pachad Yitzchak of Rabbi Yitzchak Hutner or of another Sefer?
Another Sefer. I don't remember the author,
okay.
But it's not Pachad Yitzchak or Rabbi Hutner, for sure not.
Yeah. I was wondering. That's why it makes sense.
No. There is another Sefer. I might even have it in my basement, but I don't recall the author. Wealth and poverty are naturally opposites in their very essence. And he tells us how. Listen to the categories. A wealthy person, he is chazak, he's strong. Aleph, self-confidence. B, beis bahavosai, self-esteem. Please look at note 38 to explain this. Bahavoto in the Hebrew is it's mentioned in Tehillim 52:9. Rashi interprets the word as denoting wickedness. Other commentators suggest scheming or treachery. The translation here, however, follows the interpretation of the Ebenezer there on the pasuk, which in Tehillim, which in our context seems to fit best, meaning self-esteem. So that's why the English translator translates the Rebbe's word as Bahavosa, self-esteem, because it fits in to the various virtues that he mentions now about a person who is wealthy. So again, Aleph is self-confidence, Beis is self-esteem, Gimel, Bereichav Levavai, expansiveness of his heart, Dalit, Geya v'gasruach, arrogance and ego, boasting. Hey, Mevazim aniyim, he embarrasses poor people, umiskabed b'kleinam, and he takes honor b'kleinam from their shame. It's so arrogant that's what he does. So those are all, whether they're good or bad, those are all midos of an usher, the Rebbe says. Now he goes to He'ani, someone who's poor. Aleph cholish b'manas atzma, he's weak in self-confidence. Nitke, he's shattered. Nishbert, he's broken. Mekuvitz, he's disheartened. Umashpel atzma, and he's self-deprecating. The Rebbe sees those as midos of an ani. Next page, 57. Ba'asara tifei hashidi. So we have 5 and 5 equaling 10. So the Rebbe says in the next paragraph, Ba'asara, the 10 tivim, natures of Asirios, of Ashirus, of wealth, Va'anios, and poverty, Ho'elu, and yesh behem mehama'ula b'mailis u'mehagruha b'chesroinis. You have amongst them from the ultimate of virtues, mahamula shebemalot, and mahagruah from the worst of chesroinos, of negativity. You got the best of the best and the worst of the worst within these 10. Hapchusim shebehem, the lowest of them, gruyim heima, are so worse, so bad. Bein sheheim mitevo ashidus, whether they are of the nature of the wealthy, or whether they are of the nature of the poor. In other words, within each group, the worst issue will impact both the wealthy guy and the poor person. And so it's true in the opposite. The best virtue of these, they are also, they're mida b'lei mida, meaning they're limited and they're not limited. They're measured and not measured. In other words, they also can be used in either direction. And he explains. Take, for example, self-confidence. In bo l'tachlis me'ula. If a person uses self-confidence for the ultimate virtue, b'limud ha'Torah, v'kiyum ha'mitzvos, u'midas tovos, he uses it for study of Torah and doing of mitzvahs and good character. He midah tova b'mioid. It is a wonderful midah, a wonderful characteristic, asher tovi to'eles meruba, that will bring much benefit. He noisenes koyach v'oiz, it gives power and strength, bidias halimudim, to master one's studies, bi'iyun, deeply, v'lalis midarga ledarga, and to ascend from level to level, b'muskalis, in intellectual concepts. Simultaneously, lahachnia, it gives the person the ability to subjugate, l'shaber, to shatter, u'legarish, and to chase away, to remove, as midas harois, the bad midos, the bad character traits, ulahaktis be'atzmai, and to acquire for yourself, as hamidis hateva is the good character traits. Why? Ki hamaymin be'atzmai, because someone who believes himself, who has self-confidence, lo yiksheloi, it will not be difficult for him, milahasik muskolis hamukais, to understand deep concepts, umidas trumias, and to go for exalted and very refined midas. Self-confidence drives you, and it drives you to believe in yourself. So although this idea seems to be for college professors and big intellectuals, you say, I could do it and I'm going to pursue it, and you do pursue it. And so too with midas, where a person wants to attain a certain character trait that he sees by a great rabbi, a tzaddik, by a parent, by a friend, whatever, and he wasn't raised that way, okay? And he wants that. He says, this is a beautiful thing to have. But my DNA was not made this way, and I wasn't raised this way, and didn't come to this community. But he's driven because he has self-confidence, he can get it. That's what he says in this paragraph. And this is 100% true. I told you that in yeshiva, I remember there were bacharim in the older class, one above us. In general, they had better heads than my class. But our class probably learned more than they did. Why? Because they were, they took it for granted. They were blessed with much better heads. We didn't. So we had to shake away and bake away and spend time. And at the end, we ended up learning more and probably knowing more. That doesn't mean that they don't have better heads. So what am I saying? The self-confidence is really the most important thing to drive a person to accomplish. That's what he says in this paragraph. Next paragraph. However, kol zehi kishemishtamish im teva hamona ba'atzma l'toiv moyo. The Rebbe says, what I just said to you is true if you use it to pursue goodness and things that are beneficial, umoyel, helpful. What if you use the same virtue of self-confidence, Yaakov, for emptiness? And the Rebbe says, like it's natural many times for poor people to self-confidence, to make sure you have 3 yachts and 6 cars and 7 houses and all that. Wealth blinds them. Upon these people, the Pasuk says, wealth is guarded for the owners, but for what purpose? For his bad. Hashem says, yeah, I'm going to make you wealthy, but because you're such an arrogant guy, you're going to use it to hurt yourself because you're just going to indulge, and it's going to backfire. For such self-confidence is a breeding ground for human males. So here we have the same midah, self-confidence, hamonas atzmai. If used in the right way, it's the ultimate of good. If used in the wrong way, it's the ultimate of bad. This is what the Rebbe said in the beginning of the page. He explains it now in this paragraph. Let's continue. Kain teva halev nishbar v'ashpolo. Now he says, let's look at the heart of someone who's nishbar, who's contrite and modest. They are of the greatest virtues that cannot be assessed, to have contriteness and humility. They place man on a base, that's exalted, in menschlichkeit, in humanity. Contriteness and humility is the base that puts man on the highest plateau. In which area? Of enushius, menschlichkeit, humanity. When is that true? When you use it for good things and beneficial things. But if they come because someone is missing funds and money, and he is down because of that, and that makes him contrite and humble, what they cause is that the brain of this individual and the feelings are stagnant. For it causes clogging, jading of the mind, the kibbutz halev, and emotional lethargy. So in other words, the same issue, let's talk about this for a second, the same issue, Yonason, that's healthy if used right, which is contriteness and hashpol and humility, by someone who that comes to him or her because they came from poverty and are broken because of it. In other words, if that's the cause of their contriteness and their humility, it's not healthy. Because what does it do? It makes you feel insignificant. It makes you feel not worthy. So we always say, you take a look at someone who wasn't raised with wealth, they have more humility. We say that. That's true. However, if the cause of the humility is because of negativity, meaning, I was raised poorly, and you walk around with that mindset, it's very unhealthy. So it's a catch-22, right? On one hand, who is more humble, the wealthy or the poor? The poor. But at the very same time, if the poor builds their humility on their situation, being poor, it's very unhealthy. Hillel, is there a classification for what I just said in psychology? I'm just curious.
It's funny. I was just wondering. It's I'm not familiar with one. Certainly class difference and so on are talked about in psychology a good deal, but I'm not aware of a distinction. I don't have another name for it.
Okay. Anyway, it's just something. It's very interesting. So we got to think about it. Let's go to the next page, page 59. HaChinuch v'hadracha tzrichim lerapes es cholas. Now the Rebbe takes this back and he says, this is what Chassidus does so wonderfully is, let's now go back and think about these issues, not from the detail, but from the klal, from the rule. So he says, healthy chinuch education, its purpose is to cure, to heal. Right? HaChinuch v'hadracha tzrichim lirpois es cholas hamusoris. It needs to heal the illness and sickness, the ethical illness and sickness, if one has one. Ulechazek, and education comes to strengthen es habrias hamusoris. Healthy ethical approach. That's what chinuch is. To take those ethics in man. Remember what he said in the very beginning. Chinuch is not hadracha, teaching. That's a teacher for information. You remember, this is one chapter following the other, so there's a system and a flow. So he established that already in chapter 2 of this essay, that a teacher, what he calls a madrich, a moreh, is different than a machanech and a machanech. Sorry, the difference between a moreh and a machanech. So he goes back to that idea over here by saying the purpose of a machanech, the purpose of an educator is to deal with the ethics. It's not about how much Gemara you know and how much science and math you know. No, that's not where it's at. Mind you, sometimes an educator will use. I'll give you an example. There's a seminary in Sfas where the educator believes that if the students are more academically strong, they'll come around to it. So she'll take in students that are not as maybe Yireh Shamayim as other seminaries, but she believes if they're interested in study, the study itself, as they will study and they're now older in seminary, will trigger something and say, hey, what I'm learning and what I'm doing doesn't fit. So, and I really like what I'm learning and I understand what I'm learning and I want to know more about it, so let me change my behavior. So that's another approach. He hasn't spoken about that here. I'm just thinking about it. But it says here, B'derech Klal is that chinuch is to deal with the worst in ethics and the best in ethics. Let's continue. Lochein, therefore, eine doime oifen achinuch vadrocha hamasim l'teva ashiris loifen achinuch vadrocha hamasim l'teva aniyus. You can't compare the style of chinuch for the wealthy to the style of chinuch for the poor. Although both need an organized approach to chinuch, nevertheless, they're very different. So what he's saying is, both need hadracha, both need education, but they need a different system of education. Next paragraph. Self-confidence. Although it's a wonderful virtue, when it's used for good and beneficial, and this is amongst man's nature, as long as he is man. As long as he's a mensch, he's an adam, self-confidence will work. The Rebbe says here something very powerful. Let me see if I understand it correctly. He says, Be'etzem, look what he says here, guys. Be'etzem inyana. It is essentially a negative trait. Teva ra. Believing in yourself is a negative trait. Kemaimer el binoscha, to your own bina, al tisha'en, don't rely on. Yes,
is that a chazal?
That is no, that's a pasuk. That I believe is a pasuk. Yeah, that's a verse.
Oh, yeah, here it is in Mishnah, yeah.
Right, that's a verse. There is, now he goes, there is a saying, a chacham who believes in himself, a wise man who believes in himself, only kosher is apt to trip, to fall into an obstacle. So, self-confidence on its own, he says, is no good. But if self-confidence is used for toiv v'moyel, for goodness and something positive, then you basically have taken something that if you have it and you haven't worked on it, it's going to lead you to issues and problems. Now he goes to the other issue, a contrite and modest heart. Although when used for good things, it's great, it's very special, as it says. Leiv nishger, it's a pasuk in Tehillim, I think 47, I believe, whatever. A broken heart, v'nitke, and a shattered heart. Elokim lo'isivzeh, God does not despise. Hashem loves a broken and contrite heart. Uksiv kiram Hashem v'shofel yireh. For God is exalted, and the modest one fears. Avo be'etzem inyonim hengtivim royim. But he says again, contriteness on its own is tivim royim. It's very unhealthy. Bezeh she'einem amaylos anushi she'em bali reichev lev. Why? Because man, by nature, he says, is bali reichev lev, has an expansive heart, v'histoides b'toldusam, and has like natural control. Man tends to be in control. L'historeh. So over here we're talking about what, Avi? We're talking about contriteness, nitke, brokenness. He's saying that's not on its own a virtue. So he's really in this paragraph just emphasizing what he said earlier. Don't think that self-confidence and contriteness on its own is a virtue. It's not. But when used in the right realm and form, it's the ultimate virtue. So that's why, it goes back to his points, the proper system of educating is to take these two character issues and use them accordingly to the students, those that come from poor homes or wealthy homes, or to deal with these issues with people who are wealthy or poor. So what the Rebbe would be saying to a therapist, if I understand correctly what we're reading and learning, is that the way you diagnose and you analyze and you speak and you give therapy to a poor person is different than to a wealthy person. If you want to be successful, you can't put them all in the same thing, and it's very true, Moshe. In other words, you have these two issues of self-confidence, and then you have contriteness and humility. I think I said this last week. For one type of person who needs to be built up, if you use, contriteness and humility, you're not doing good for him or her. You need to build them up. And we see this with children. We see this with students. So, my parents are survivors. It's a European home, right? My father in particular was always, talking about to get good marks. And it was what I'm saying? To achieve and accomplish, because he lived through that and went through that, right? Coming from destruction to rebuild. Now, in a normal situation, is it healthy to push? You have to be excellent and get the best marks, and implying if you don't, you're secondhand, you're a tear, you're a used garment. You understand? So there's no question that some of these issues were driven into us in such a home to achieve and accomplish, right? Because of where he was coming from. So, in a way, it worked. It worked. Because the setting was right for... Yes, Hillel.
I was just going to say, it seems in therapy, we often use the words leverage, that the therapist needs to have a certain leverage. And it seems here, or authority, and in the case of somebody who's kind of brokenhearted, or there's going to be a natural leverage in any kind of therapeutic or educational relationship, because they're going to look up to the authority or the resource or whatever. But with somebody who has a sense of entitlement based upon their wealth or their education or so on, then the educator needs to have some means to kind of establish their authority that challenges kind of the natural arrogance that often comes across with having status of one kind or another.
Absolutely, I agree with you. Anyone else want to say something about what we learned today? Any thoughts, ideas? Is it clear, Moshe? You understand? Netzach? Yes, you understand.
I came from a wealthy home, and I came to Morristown, thinking I was the cat whiskers. And they put me in beautiful new suits with beautiful new ties and everything. And wow, I was a cat whiskers. And it was very difficult to try to get out of that, because when I went into Morristown, I wasn't so good in Gemara. And because I had an inflated ego, I didn't want to go down one level. I wanted to go on with the people, and it was very, very detrimental to me.
So, are you saying that? But 1 second. Are you saying you feel that they didn't assess you correctly? Is that what I'm hearing you say?
Well, Rabbi Fischke and Rabbi Lipke, they suggested that I stay down one level, which would be good for me in my Gemara.
Right.
But in my self-esteem,
right,
myself go down to any other people, it wasn't good. So
it's an excellent, right, and I'm so happy that you're open to share this, because this is what the Rebbe is identifying, these issues. I don't know the answer. I don't know the answer, but But this is exactly what the Rebbe wants with this kuntris. He wants the educator to ask himself, is it more important for Yonason to be in a higher class, although he's weaker in Gemara and he's going to know less, but his self-esteem will be better? Or he's the type of person that needs that, and ultimately he'll be stronger because of that, even in self-esteem, but it'll come later. And this is a difficult answer. But this is what he's getting at. And how many teachers, mashpiyim and everyone else, how many, you understand, this is exactly what he's identifying here. And I think if there's a good relationship between parents and educators, then we could have a better approach and answer to these issues that you identified. In your case, probably you're on your own, but I'm saying, like I told you, with my son, because the principal was very open to dialoguing and hearing from me what I thought, it worked. But if he would have been like many other principals, no, this is the way it is, and if you don't like it, too bad, then go find yourself another yeshiva. So, and I'm not blaming anyone, because, a principal and a teacher, they have a lot on their plate. But this is education. This is education. And, when you find a good educator, stick with them and support them, because it will make all the difference in the future, But Yonason, I feel that, Baruch Hashem, you turned out excellent, and you have children and grandchildren, and you know how to learn, and you have great self-esteem, and you're an excellent, you're exemplary. So, the fact that at the time, it was difficult. As he said, you came from a certain culture and background, so it's like the story I told you with Rabbi Plotkin, who came to Lubavitch in the 1900s, and he also came from, not from wealth, maybe he did, he came from knowing all this Gemara, and then he was a big Talmud Chacham, and in Lubavitch, those things don't fly, it's about character and midas and bittul. So he was crushed, but he stuck with the program. And he came out to be not only a goyin and learning, but he came out to be a very special yid. So I think the same was with you, Yonason, But at the time, it's very challenging. It's a very challenging thing, no question about it.
Yeah, very challenging.
What?
Yeah, it was very challenging at the time.
Yeah. Okay, Chevra, listen. We'll talk tomorrow. Sei gesund, good cheer. Everyone, only simchas. Hashem should have mercy on us, and Mashiach should come now. Everyone should stand up, and never again should such a thing happen. Chas v'shalom. Sei gesund. Bye-bye.
Take care.
Bye-bye.
Amen.